the other thing I was thinking is that when we're reading the Bible, you can't read it in like silos. Like you can't just read this and feel like you're going to understand it. And that's why it's hard when people just get into it. Like you start at the beginning thinking this is where I should start, but there's so much spread out that if you don't have everything, you'll be like, wait, why?
Right.
So you don't have the laws, or you never read the laws. So you're like, well, why are they doing it this way, or why are they doing that?
Yep.
So you have to get the whole picture, which is hard to do, which I feel like, because sometimes I'm like, oh, let me read the like footnotes or the linked verses, and they taking me are you taking me out of where I'm at?
Yep.
So, or you're taking me ahead, or sometimes they'll take you behind. Like you just don't know where it's gonna take you, but the whole thing has to be read together for you to fully get an understanding of what's going on.
Right.
So I think what we're doing is good, but at the same time, there's like we're trying not to like go too far ahead or go too far behind, but we're gonna have to do that
at some point.
Yeah.
What is going on, XYZers, XYZ Nation? We're right back at you with another hot episode on the ones and twos. Okay, this is the wrong show. Generational Scriptures. We're glad you're watching. Glad that you all are hanging out with us. We're back for Genesis chapter 7.
Yep.
And y'all know the title? You have to know this song.
Can you stand the rain?
Can you stand the rain?
I am singing for y'all.
I do like that song, actually. And I do know it.
Yeah.
Good. Finally, one that everybody knows. All right. So chapter 7, and you should see why the title is called Can You Stand the Rain as we're walking through this. So we're supposed to do something when we start, and that something is to introduce ourselves. So I am the latchkeyed one himself, the former X-Man representing Gen X all up in your area, representing the DMV. And next to me we have...
I am Maya. My voice. I feel like I just woke up. I am Maya, the resident millennial.
Da, 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 da. And then we have...
I am Jasmine, your microwaver.
Yay!
And together we are...
Generational Scriptures. All right. Woo! So, y'all know how we do. I think we got into a good sort of run here, roll. So, we got to start out with some tea. And Jasmine's going to bring that to us on Jasmine's tea.
Jasmine's tea. Yes, I don't have my tea today. It's okay. We're going to act like my water is my tea. But, so for today's tea, I want to talk about symbolism. So, I know like we're introduced to the building of the ark in chapter 6.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we know there is a flood coming, right? It's not here just yet. But when I was going through and I was looking at the story in general, and then I was discussing it. I actually was discussing it with my grandma.
Hey!
Full circle, right? And we were talking about how God provides, He equips us with, whether it's like tools or situations or avenues or paths or something that allows us to be saved by grace. So, and it's so interesting because the ark is such a big, like it's a very physical, it's a physical, real, like tangible symbol in this case, but sometimes it's not as straightforward as that. It's not something you can see, touch, like something very literal. Sometimes it's a little bit more, it's a little deeper, something that you have to think about, something that's not, what is it? What's the word for it? I can't think of it. If it's not tangible, what is it?
Intangible.
Okay, there you go. I was looking for some random big word, but yeah, it's intangible. So, but in this case with the ark, I just found it interesting that I think that there is a point to the fact that this is so large, it's so magnificent. There's so many like very, very like super thought out details down to the cubits of how it's structured, how the animals are going to fit, how many go on. So like everything about it seems very intentional. And I think that there's more to it. Like, of course, we're not going to see it here. But when I was thinking deep, like trying to think real deep about everything that goes into this ark, it just shows God's how intentional and deliberate, that's the word I was looking for, how deliberate he is and how he helps us through situations such as this. So when he decided, what we'll see in chapter 7, when the actions start to happen, Noah and his family and all the animals that he set, like, okay, this is all the things need to be on the ark, all this good stuff, they are saved in such a magnificent way. Like, it's just such a large act that God allows to happen, and it proves how he looks out for us in ways that is just unimaginable. And that's on a big scale, but it happens on micro scales every day in our lives. Like, for example, okay, I was just having this conversation with somebody a few days ago. We all get mad when we're late to work, or if we're late to church, or if we're late to an appointment. But what if you're late because it was an accident that you may have been a part of had you not left that extra 5 minutes late? What if there had been, oh my gosh, I keep tripping up this step. Okay, what if there was something at the top of that step that would have scared you to death, or something you would have bust your head if you hadn't tripped at the bottom? Like, it's just so many little, like, micro things that I don't think we consider in our lives. And those are like just examples, but it plays out in our lives in different ways depending on who you are, circumstances, and all those good things. And I think we have to start considering those little micro things, because it's super easy to be appreciative for the big giant acts that we see God doing. But start analyzing your life and being thankful and grateful for his intervention and his equipping of you when it's happening on smaller scales.
Yeah. I think that's good, because all of these things should be used to help shape us, inform us into Christ, is who we're supposed to be growing into. Go and read Ephesians.
Yeah.
So, they're meant to build character. They're meant to build perseverance, which all ultimately points to a faith that we have in the Lord, who organizes and sets up all of these things. So,
master orchestrator.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. So we got the tea. Ding. And now we got to get into the All Right, So Boom segment, which takes us through the last chapter. So, all right, so boom.
All right, chapter 6, we are basically introduced to the fact that people are multiplying, and we have the daughters of man and the sons of God. And if you go back to that chapter, there was a lot of discussion on who that possibly could be. But either way, the sons of God are taking wives of the daughters of men, and these people are coming out to be very evil. God basically is like, this is getting out of control, and he wants to cut the lifespan of man. And there's the question of, is it 120 years for the people that are on earth, or 120 years for, that's how long people will live? And I think in that chapter we stopped on the fact that it's probably how long the people that are currently there have before the flood happens. Again, go back to that chapter because there's a lot of discussion there on that. We also are introduced to the Nephilim. I feel like I'm going to keep saying go back to the last chapter because if I try to go into it, it'll be a lot. But we talk about who they are, and whether they're from the sons of God and daughters of men, or if they are just placed here to say, hey, there were giants on earth at this time. They're going to be giants on earth later. Also, like, who are they? God talks about they talk about how God is basically grieved and regrets all of this, and that's anthropomorphal, blah blah blah. The big word that Chris likes to use, but like putting human characteristics on God, which happens a lot in this first section of Genesis, and probably later on in the Bible as well. But Noah's family, or Noah specifically, finds favor in the sight of God, and God is basically telling him, you're going to be saved because you've been righteous in my eyes, and your family is going to be saved. He gives him the instructions on how to build the ark. And he warns them that a flood is coming. And Noah, being the man he is like, he does everything that God said. And I believe it ends with Noah did this and he did all that God commanded him.
Yep.
So he's on the right track.
He's on the right track.
Yeah.
You almost had it. All you had to do was say ism at the end.
Yeah, I was like, almost had
You were
it.
like anthropomorph with that big word. I was like, ism.
Oh, anthropomorphism?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Look at me. I learned a new word today. Because I think you have to use that word today, too.
Probably. I think so. Yeah. I see where you're going with that. I think you're right. All right. Thanks. All right. So, boom segment. Nice. Next up, I think we can ready to get into some reading.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm first.
Let's
today.
boogie. Let's get it.
That. Look, they gave me a verse first. Was not forgotten today.
No, you weren't
Go
forgotten.
back to the episodes to see why that's funny.
You were not forgotten
right.
today.
Genesis chapter 7, verses 1-5. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights. And every living thing that I have made, I will blot out from the face of the ground." And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him.
Yep. Mm-hmm. We start off and the Lord is giving him something to do again. Well, actually, he's not even giving them something to do in sense of preparation. He's actually sort of like looking at the end of everything has been done that needs to be done. So now you go and take shelter, right? And he sort of reiterates some of the things that he said in chapter 6, particularly about the animals. But there's a slight difference in there.
Yeah.
Right? So do we think that there's a mismatch between what's happening and what's talked about in chapter 6 in terms of the animals and the pairs versus what's happening in chapter 7 with the 7 pairs?
I felt like this was a setup for what's going to happen later down the line. So in the Cain and Abel story, we see the people offering sacrifices, right? So there's some sort of idea that for them to commune with God, or for whatever reason, they're still doing that. Yep. Even though it's not like specifically said till later in the Bible that people are going to be making sacrifices, we do see a pattern of, I'm going to make an altar, or I'm going to make a sacrifice, or I'm going to do something. Yeah. So this is like, just so y'all don't ask where these are coming from, it was given. Even though I felt like it didn't have to be 7 right now, because if you're on this ark for however long, couldn't animals be populating? I don't know. Maybe not. But and maybe they aren't given that instruction, so that's why you need the extra for the sacrifice. It's a lot of like, I don't know.
Yeah. You have any thoughts, Jasmine?
I was confused because I was trying to understand. Like, I was like, maybe this is multifaceted. First of all, okay. First confusion. 7 pairs, yes, because I'm like, okay, we're talking one of each at first, like one of each like species with the male and female. So that's just 2 of each type, right? But then the clean and unclean also had me confused. So I was like, okay, so they must be there for a purpose, because then clean and unclean were perfectly, like, they were specified for a reason. So they must be serving a purpose on the ark. But then again, like you said, if we have one of each, why do we need 7 to right off the bat? Because they can make 7 but what we think, because they may not have made 7 equal pairs. If that makes like may not have made 7 equal
Or
pairs.
like male, female, if they're giving birth to animals on the ark.
Yeah.
And we don't know the life cycle the pregnancy cycle of animals.
Yeah.
Or at least I know. I didn't look it up.
Yeah.
But all animals have different spans of how long it takes.
Yeah. It's called gestation or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But yeah, and when I first read it, I was with you. I was like, wait a second, is this a
setup?
Yeah, is there a real difference? And I came to the conclusion, I think, just as you're saying, that it's not that it's a difference, right? You say in one place bring a pair, and then here you bring 7. I think it's just more of being more specific about what he needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you see that here. And I also think you'll see that in the next set of verses because there's more specificity. Say that 5 times fast, as that you'll see in this chapter as we continue to walk through these verses. There's just more and more specifics about what's happening, why it's happening, how it's happening. So that type of thing.
You remember in the first few chapters when we were talking about, like, I was always like, is this retrospective or is this summation? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's like that, like the first, like last chapter, it was more summation and now we're getting into detail. And we'll just continue to move into detail.
Yeah, but I think what's happened here and what we shouldn't lose focus on is that now that the Lord is telling them to get on the ark, it's like it's finished. So when we're talking about that 120 years, that span seems like it is gone.
Yeah.
So in the last chapter, I agree, it's sort of foreshadowing and telling you what some things that are going on, but he still got to build the ark. All the animals still have to come. Yeah. And now I think it's to the point of, all right, all that's done, get ready to get into the ark because it's about to go down. I think I had to come to the realization that, God's been communicating to them about unclean and clean, because you don't usually hear about that until you get to where he starts talking about the laws and the dietary laws. You can eat this, you can't eat that, right? And then we know that continues on, and so slow down, Chris. We know that the reason for that is to separate Israel from the rest of the nations, as with the rest of the laws, right? But also in Acts, when Peter's sitting on top of the house and the blanket comes down with all the food on it, with the pork and the bacon and the sausage and the crabs, and he's like, I can't eat that. And it's like at that point, Peter even knew that all things were declared clean. So we understand that the dietary laws and the clean, unclean type of thing was meant to separate Israel. But I had a little bit of a struggle with how does Noah know unclean and clean?
I was supposed to say that.
What happened here? When was he told? Yeah. But I think to your point, Moyo, is that we're not told how they even know how to set up an altar. Mm-hmm. We just know that in chapter 4, Cain and Abel offered something. Mm-hmm. We'll see at the end of this when we get to chapter 9. I think it's chapter 9. Noah builds an altar. I'm like, okay, how is it special? What are they at? So somewhere, somehow along the line, all of this stuff has been told to them. Yeah. So they know, and that's what I had to come to grips with.
Yeah.
I was looking like, when I saw Clean and Unclean, I was like, did he just go, you're not clean and you're clean? Like, I don't understand, because when I thought, like dietary restrictions was the first thing on my mind. Like, okay, I understand that there's certain benchmarks of what a clean animal is and versus a not clean animal when you're eating it. But when you're not, if I'm just looking at one, how would I know? Unless, like you said, he was told. We're just not told,
right?
That he was told.
I think that's where I end up. Like somehow, some way, God had communicated to them.
Yeah,
which I think is what you were saying.
Yeah, and I the other thing I was thinking is that when we're reading the Bible, you can't read it in like silos. Like you can't just read this and feel like you're going to understand it. And that's why it's hard when people just get into it. Like you start at the beginning thinking this is where I should start, but there's so much spread out that if you don't have everything, you'll be like, wait, why?
Right.
So you don't have the laws, or you never read the laws, so you're like, well, why are they doing it this way, or why are they doing that?
Yep.
So you have to get the whole picture, which is hard to do, which I feel like. But sometimes I'm like, oh, let me read the like footnotes or the linked verses, and they taking me like you taking me out of where I'm at.
Yep.
So, or you're taking me ahead, or sometimes they'll take you behind. Like you just don't know where it's gonna take you, but the whole thing has to be read together for you to fully get an understanding of what's going on.
Right.
So I think what we're doing is good, but at the same time, there's like we're trying not to like go too far ahead or go too far behind, but we're gonna have to do that
at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also, just to piggyback on that a little bit, if you don't see the whole picture, don't get discouraged.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it takes a minute to see the whole picture.
Yes.
Right. And so there's enough in here, even if you don't get the whole picture, to chew on and to understand and to know.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty, at least to me, of scripture, I love how it's a tapestry. It's woven together. It's like 66 books written by, 20, 30 plus authors over hundreds of years, almost millennia, that all fits together and is interwoven. So, yeah, if you don't see that connection, right? I think we all agree. Don't get discouraged.
Yeah.
But look for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Want to dive in to see what those connections are.
Yeah.
So, the Lord gives a forecast. What's the forecast look like for the foreseeable future?
40 days and 40 nights of rain.
Of rain.
If it didn't cause flooding, I would enjoy that. I like rain a lot. I actually do. I like just listening to the rain, being inside. When I was younger, if it was hot enough outside, I would want to like go out and run in the rain. Every once in a while, my mom would let me do it.
That's always cool.
So like, but this is they don't have drains yet. Like it's just no.
Yeah. Huh. I don't know. I'd be like, man, it's rain. I mean, earlier this week, it rained like 3 straight days.
I was about to say, I'll be exhausted within 3-4 days. Like, I'm not looking forward to the forecast of this next week. It's going to rain every day for like 4 days, 5 days. And I take for granted that we actually have drains and that water goes somewhere.
Yeah.
And doesn't just raise all the waters up and flood all of our cities every day. Well, it floods some cities, but that's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm. And so this is the blotting out that was brought up initially in chapter 6, and the Lord is reiterating in chapter 7. Did you all find it interesting that the way that it's talked about is the Lord has made these things that he's going to blot out, like ownership? Did you all pick up on that, or is it just me?
What do you mean?
In verse 4, for in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made, I will blot out from the face of the ground. When I read that, it was like he's claiming, in a sense, ownership of it. And we like to think, even nowadays, I think we talked about being an automaton a little bit the last time, in the last chapter, but we like to think of us being these isolated, self-owning entities. And to a sense, we should be, particularly to each other, right? I'm not condoning slavery or anything like that. But when it comes down to it, the Lord is saying, all this stuff that I have made.
Yeah.
So as much as we can look at each other and be like, you don't own me, that just came to my head. But the real thing is that the Lord owns it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he makes that claim because he's the one who created it all, as we've looked at thus far in Genesis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that stood out to me.
You ever heard, I'm sure you guys have heard, when your mom said, I brought you in this world.
I was thinking that too.
That's exactly that's what I think about. Like, he can, like, if I was looking at this for the very first time, I was like, why would he do that? What makes the Lord think he could just come? You made all this stuff. You put it here so we can enjoy it. And now you're taking it all away. he has the right.
Yeah. And it's hard for us to grasp that.
Yeah.
Because we are so self-absorbed. We are so no one can touch me. I'm my own. I'm the out of that poem Invictus. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We like to think of things like that, but in the full view of things, the Lord says, "I brought you in this world.
I take you out.
Take you out." Oh man! And then constant theme from Noah. We saw it in your all right. So boom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He did it all.
And he did it all. And would so I don't know. I feel like I'm going to keep bringing things back to today. It's obedience.
Yeah.
It's hard, but you can see that here Noah's taking that. And one thing that I've been reading, and we'll see it a little bit later, is I don't a lot of what I've read and looked at when it talks about God finding favor, it's not saying that he's finding favor because Noah's doing everything that he's being told to do. It's almost like Noah, which is how I think we should be today, right? We act and are obedient and behave and want to do the will of the Lord, not because that saves us or that makes us righteous. We are righteous. We recognize what that means, so we want to do, right? And I almost look at Noah in that light a little bit, where he is doing because he's walked with the Lord, as we saw earlier. So he knows who this Lord is. He understands who he is. And so now he wants to do the right thing.
So what you're getting at is relationship. It's about the relationship that you have with the Lord. Because once you build that relationship and you understand what you are expected, what's expected of you, you do it because of that relationship and your want and will to be obedient.
Yeah.
Not I'm doing the things expecting that that's going to do something for me, and then like the relationship is secondary or it's not even existent at all.
Yeah. I mean, even I'm probably gonna step on some toes, but it is what it is. Even when you go to different churches and they are so caught up in, and people can be so caught up in, this is my ministry and I'm doing it for the Lord, right? I do this and this and this and this at the church. I serve on this board. I'm a deacon. I'm a deaconess. Right?
Yeah.
If all of that's not from the right heart posture, like you're doing something to help the Lord in a sense, to like if you weren't doing it, you couldn't advance the kingdom. So this is a true story. I've gone to the Dominican Republic on a missions trip twice. I remember the first time I went, I was so gung ho. I was like, because when you go on these mission trips, everybody gets together and they pray and you talk about what you're going to do. You're trying to get your heart right. And I'm pumped. I'm like, oh Lord, I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna tear this place up for you. They ain't gonna. Oh, I'm on fire. I'm ready to go. Da 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 da. They ain't gonna know what hit them. They ain't never seen nothing like us as we go over there. And I'm gonna make all this noise. And then I got over there, and I was like, wait, it's already Christians here.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really need me. You want me to help, but you don't need me.
Yeah.
Who am I to think that I'm going to bring something new and that like you haven't been working here already? Who am I to think that I just got it like that and I'm going to go and speak words that they've never heard of when they already have your word?
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes you get so caught up in what you're going to do and thinking that you're the one who breaks things out. And sometimes you just gotta come to the realization that no, it's all about the Lord. It's not really about me at all. I want to help. I want to do right. But if I don't, he's gonna get somebody else who will.
Yeah.
And so we can get caught up in thinking that I am the end all be all when you're not. My ministry, don't change it. Don't touch it. Well, if it's not working, maybe it's got to be touched or changed.
Yeah.
Right? So, all right, that's my little diatribe. Anything on to follow up on that?
I also think this is a really interesting stark difference between Jonah and Noah.
Mm.
We were talking about Jonah in Bible study recently, like last week, and just his steady will to be disobedient and just to do his own thing and not acknowledging like is it, I always get them confused, is it omnipresence?
All omnipresent, so he's everywhere.
Yeah,
He's full.
Yeah, like thinking he's running from God
all the time. Right.
God is everywhere all the time. Like all those things. That and like having even like today. Let's bring it to today. Like I feel like we want to be obedient sometimes, but in most cases we will question why God, or why am I doing this, or I don't want to, but I guess I have to. Whereas Noah just kind of does, and maybe he does question God. We're not told.
Yeah.
But he's acting, and it seems as though he's acting upon command. Like you're told, all right, Lord, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna trust you. And I mean, again, like we may not be told, but I don't feel like there's a sense of fear and urgency. It feels like there's urgency because the Lord is saying, do this. You have this much time. This is what needs to be done. And then he does. Not like, oh my gosh, this flood is coming wrong. How are we gonna do this? You said, okay, all these animals have to get on here. Okay, so you're gonna wipe up the rest of the earth. Like that doesn't, as you read, it doesn't feel like that.
Okay.
Which, well, to me,
yeah.
So like, it's just interesting. It's the way the story flows. Like, and I said this in the last episode too. It just seems like things are flowing so well because of Noah is just acting. God's commanding, Noah is acting.
Noah's right.
We don't see that resistance, that pull, that push, or that pushback.
Yeah.
Or that questioning here.
Yeah. And again, I think you made the point. Not to say it's not happening.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not recorded.
Yeah.
And if there was like serious pushback like Jonah, we probably would have it.
Right. I feel like if it was significant.
I mean, but Jonah wasn't pushed back. I mean, let's be fair. Jonah was straight disobedience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Deliberate.
Jonah was like, no, I ain't going.
Yeah.
In 40 days, I'm going to give you an 8-word sermon. Right. That's it. Y'all going to have to do the rest on your own.
Yeah, figure it out. Jonah was something.
Oh, man. Cool. So next up.
All right. So this is Genesis chapter 7. Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and of birds and of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth.
Yo, Noah is 600.
Yeah. What in the world?
That is crazy.
600 years old?
I'm a 12th of Noah's age.
Jeez.
But that's middle age for Noah.
Come on. Yeah, I guess, but geez.
I know. That's his 50. That's today. 50 years. Let's say 50 years old.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I'm like, Lord, I'm going to try, but I don't know. I'm going to need a lot of breaks.
Yeah, that's insane. Especially if you think about like if we perceive how we've been saying like it's the 120 years was how many years they had. Let's say this was the end of the 120. If we go back 120 years, that's mental math I can't do. How old was he?
480.
Okay, so he was 480.
Well, we know he was 500 at the beginning, so he could be he's 600, but hold on, was 600 years old when the flood of waters came, but he had his kids at 500 in one of these chapters, and that's when he was giving instructions, right? Or am I tripping? Or was it by 500 he had these kids?
No, I think it talks to.
He was five. It says after Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
After he was 500, or
I don't know. I mean, so let's think about this. Could the Lord have talked to Noah before he had? My initial thought is that he could have.
I'm gonna go with that because I'm liking this.
I don't know, because now Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight. It sounds like he already had the sons.
Are you looking at when man began to multiply the sons?
Yeah, I'm in chapter 6, verse 9. These are generations of Noah. Noah was this.
Noah had 3 sons.
Unless we're saying, I don't know. And God just made me start thinking about it now, so I
earth was corrupt and
didn't have enough time to.
and filled with violence. Yeah, I don't know that there's an issue with the 600 and the 500, just because I can see
It being rounded.
the Lord. I was thinking rounded initially, but I was just thinking I would not preclude the Lord from, and also note with the 120, and I meant to bring this up. This isn't the Lord talking to anyone in chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and the daughters were born to them, that's the narrator, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, he's giving us some insight into what the Lord is thinking. My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120. Then back to the narrative, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also after.
Yeah, so the 120 times started before Noah was given instruction. I think that makes more sense to me.
Right.
Because then it took 100 years for him to do it, but that saying, hey, this is how long I'm giving them, could have been 20 years ago.
Yeah. I'm not saying I know exactly how it works out, but I can see either the 120 being that point, just as we read, and could be, as you're thinking, the 20 years elapsed to the 500 when he had his kids. Or I could see it as the Lord going to tell Noah to start building this ark before he has kids. I could even see that, because the 500 in chapter 6:9, right? These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons. Now the earth was corrupt. So you're saying when it says had 3 sons, you're thinking that's past tense, right?
Not necessarily, because in chapter 5 it says after Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So he probably had them after. If he was given instruction at 500 to start, he didn't have his kids till after he was 500. That's what it says in chapter 5, verse 32.
So, and that's one last question. Why do you say he was given instruction at 500 to start? Just because that's when the kids were born?
No,
And this is all staying in, because this is good. Because this is how
doing the research as we go. Yeah. I got
things out.
Okay, so after 500, we're saying he fathers his children. That specifically said. These are generations of Noah. He had 3 sons. The earth was corrupt. And God said to Noah, I've determined to make an end of all flesh. So we don't know when. God is telling Noah now, but he didn't say, we don't know when he determined. We don't know when he determined. Okay.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that disconnects, we'll just call it that because I don't have a really other good word to use. It leaves open for when this started and ended in terms of Noah.
Then I think at one point we may have mentioned that, it took 100 years. Then it may not have taken 100 years to build the ark.
I honestly thought it took 120
to build the ark.
Yeah, because and some of that is, and I base that on the fact that the Lord said man shall live for 120 years. And then we get the inside and the inner thoughts of that 120. Then we're followed up by the discussion with Noah about what to do. So I did not think there was a big gap between when the Lord said 120 and when Noah was to start working. I didn't think there was like a 20-year gap there.
Man, I'm thinking there is a gap, because if I say I'm going to destroy the earth, I tell you I'm going to destroy the earth because everyone's evil. Would at that point would I let you go find wives for your sons from the evil people? I feel like you have to already have these wives and sons so that you can choose them before the fact. And it's like, okay, well, I'm already married to them, so they have to come. Because we start off chapter 6 with sons of God and daughters of man, and they were just so evil.
Yeah.
So where is he finding righteous wives for his, or maybe they're not righteous wives. Maybe they just they just have to pick wives.
Get wives. Get them before
it's too late.
Yeah.
Because his kids don't have children yet either, because we don't hear of any children or grandchildren going on this ark.
No.
So they could be young and just picked wives for them.
Yeah. So these are all good questions, and I don't have an answer. And I'm trying to. Chapter 11, we get to a genealogy for Shem. I don't see one other than the table of nations. I do not see one for Ham and Japheth. That gives us like years, like that formula that we talked about. Such and such was such and such years old when he had such and such, and such he lived for another such and such, and then he died and had other sons and daughters. I think we see that for Shem. I don't see that for any of the other of Noah's sons. And the reason for Shem we'll talk about when we get there. But maybe we need to, and Shem, I believe, is the oldest because he's always listed first.
But we learn that may not be the case in genealogy, or we're just saying just because he was named first, he has to be first. Or we just don't know.
Again, don't know. So I always say this, somehow we got to mark it, that when we get to this, we got to do the math.
Yeah.
Okay.
We
could try.
We could try and do the math to say, all right, Shem had a child at this time.
Yeah.
And Noah was his dad, and Noah at this time had Shem. So how does that work out
how old
in
is
the math?
Okay. When we get to chapter 11.
Yeah.
So if you know the answer, put it in the comments. But we'll try to come back to this in chapter 11.
And just by my initial cursory look, I think that I'm going to be proven wrong. But we'll see what happens when we get there. But yeah, so Noah's 600, and he's got
Oh yeah, you are about to be proven wrong.
He got a lot of work.
100 years old already. So he's basically 98 when he got on the ark.
Came, right?
Yeah. So he was old enough to be around.
So yeah, maybe we
answered already. No need to do the math. But we still don't know when the instruction was given.
Yeah.
We know that those sons were born before the instructions were given. It could still be after.
It could still be after. So
they're the oldest. We're thinking is 98 years old.
Right.
When they get on the boat. When they get on the ark.
And you also know, just as you mentioned, that there were no others born on. There no grandchildren were born on the ark. It was just his children and his children's wives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's got to be factored in as well.
Yeah.
This is good. I thank you. I enjoyed walking through that. Anything else on 6 through 10? Everything happened as it said. I have a question in here about how do we look at the ark, and I think you touched on that in your tea, Jasmine. Answering questions before they even asked.
The only thing I saw was the order of everything going on, because I think we talked about in one chapter where God is appointing these animals to go on.
Yep.
Because we don't see, we see Noah and his family, they go on, and then it says, and then the animals went on. Nobody's like, hey, come on, animals. Yeah. It's they're just, y'all walked on, we walked on.
Yeah. And it's I think the closest to the statement is what we saw last time when it was they came to the ark, I think was the wording.
Mm-hmm.
Here it doesn't seem as concrete, but I still agree with you. Like they just sort of ushered themselves in,
Yeah.
like Noah, like a processional.
Yeah, it says went into the ark with Noah as God had commanded Noah.
Right.
So it's like they just went.
So the 7 pairs are clean,
Mm-hmm.
and then
He
the
didn't have
one
to
pair
pick.
unclean.
Maybe he didn't have to pick them. They just.
That's sort of, and that makes sense, right? Because again, Noah 600. He gonna go wrangle up all these animals.
Yeah.
I told you I would need a lot of breaks.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I mean, they had 7
Like, Lord,
days.
I need another 120 years because I'm tired.
Yes, at 600 years old. Jeez.
7 days to before the flood came. So I wonder if is that 7 days that it took everything to get on there, or it's just we're in here now we're just sitting. Is that a test of your faith to say, okay, a day passed, I don't see no water. Another day passed, I still don't see any rain. Or is it this is how long it took us to get on here? So
Yeah. And when we read the next couple of verses, it'll be even a little more interesting. With that, I will read them. Genesis chapter 7, verses 11 through 16. So in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark. They and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2, of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female, of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in.
it said on that very day.
Yeah. So it's like 7 days he's given the command, but it almost makes it seem like, all right, we know we need to get on, but they didn't actually get on until the day when it started to rain, which is interesting, right? Did you want to follow up on that, Amy?
It's a little confusing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's this whole like, okay, something is said and then it's clarified in the next section, but it's like, I don't know.
And it's not even that it's just clarified in the next section. And I think we talked about this in the opening, but 6 to 10 are really seems condensed when I read 11 through 16.
Like a summary and then
yeah,
what
and
is
you
it?
get
Specific, more specific.
Right, more. So let's just say Noah was 600 years old, and then it goes back and it says, I mean, like, this is a date.
Month on the 17th day of the month.
Right.
Yeah.
Very specific.
So, of Noah's life at that. So it's like almost, I wonder if it's meant to help cement things.
The timeline.
Yeah, cement the timeline because this is a major event, but also the story because you sort of build on things. At least that's how I usually do when I learn stuff. So I'm wondering if that's what the intent is here.
I can see that.
That it just is meant, okay, I'm going to mention it here. And then I'm going to mention it with more detail in the next set of verses.
Yeah, I think so because we've seen that in previous chapters.
Right. I mean, it's a little like the male-female creation where the Lord, Moses writes it as like, okay, on this day, he created male and female, he created them. And then going back into chapter 2 and talking about strictly the creation of male and female, I can see that as being similar. But these things are like right back to back. And with the 7 days of creation, there's a purpose of writing down this numbered set of events that happen. And I'm just going through the entire week. And then, there's something special in that week I want to go back and touch on. Here, I mean, the whole verse is about the flood. So why in 6 through 10 mention it one way and then expand on it in 11 through 16. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly why, but it is there.
Yeah.
And I don't think, matter of fact, these don't contradict each other. The 600 years, and now I'm going to get really detailed about the 600 years. Who got on the boat? In chapter 7, it's just Noah and his sons and his wife. In chapter
You mean verse 7?
Yeah, verse 7 is just Noah, his sons, and his wife. And then in verse 13, we get Noah, his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wives and the three wives. It's just more detail as we go through it again. Talking about all the clean and unclean animals, all right? And here in verse 14, every beast according to its kinds, and he lists everything.
Yeah.
I just had a thought. When I read this, particularly in terms of the beasts and the livestock and such, what does that remind you of? Does it take you back in Genesis anywhere?
They're talking about the beasts for the serpent?
No, I'm thinking of the creation of the birds of the air and the
The
swarming
wording.
things will swarm and the creeping things and and it's like it almost this section here as I'm reading it again. I think it's happened almost every time I've read it. Takes me back to Genesis and the creation. So a lot of people will look at this as sort of, and we'll see it even more as we walk through, but keep your eye out, like a recreation type narrative. Like there's decreation that's going on. And instead of the Lord forming out of the ground for what he's going to do next, he's taking all of the things that he's already created and he's going to load them up, keep them safe, and then use that to repopulate instead of just having to build everything from scratch.
Yeah.
So that's now that I read through that, that's interesting. That's interesting. What else stuck out to you all in these verses?
The other thing for me is that the Lord shut them in.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, they didn't close their own door.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what does shut them in look like? Because it could have said that the Lord closed the door. Shut them in like this door is sealed. This door will not open. Like, what is that? What does that look like?
I feel like I like that they were shut in and couldn't come out. Like you're in here now until the doors are back open. But I guess we won't know until we find out how the doors are open.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it sort of cements his protection over the ark.
Okay, I like that.
Right, because this is like the seal of the. I almost think of it as a sealing, like the Lord. Anthropomorphism, his hand, he comes down and closes the side door, and it's like, okay, this has been closed. And to your point, no, it's not going to fly open in the middle of the storm.
Yeah.
Thing is what I think of when I see it.
Like if there were any mistakes in the way that Noah built it, it's not going to leak through this door because God shut the door.
God shut it, and it's almost to me like this idea of protection.
Yeah.
Around the ark.
I like that.
Did you all see anything or think of anything when it talked about where the water is coming from?
Yeah. I think when I was reading it, it went back to that picture again and how they had the waters in this, what was in the firmament.
Yep.
And like all of that just is released.
Yeah.
So everything that you thought was being held, like I think you talked about like, do you mean waters when they were separating the waters? Like it's like, maybe it was waters because now it just opens and.
I'm telling you, I really do think this solidified it for me. I really do think it was like okay, we're dividing this. Okay, we have the oceans and then the oceans, but like up there. And because there was mention of this somewhere else too. I don't remember where it was talking about the what like. What was it was one of our episodes. We were talking about it. Oh, did we talk about it off camera? I don't remember. But
In
talking
the
about the water.
first, this is where this took me back to, and
Where?
I'm wondering if this is where you're going, Jasmine. When we talked about the spirit hovered over the waters.
Yes. Yes.
This took this
Yes.
this and our next episode is taking me right back there
Mm-hmm.
and making me think about, is that really waters?
Yeah, because we were like, is it figurative?
Right.
Or is it literal?
Yep,
And I think, did we land on figurative?
I think so.
Yeah, see, I think it's literal. I think I'm changing my mind. I'm changing my mind.
I don't know. Are you wrestling
I mean,
with
they're
that? Are you thinking about
understanding.
that?
I think with the understanding of what the earth looked like, it's literal.
Mm.
Like they meant it was literal waters up here, and now that this is everything burst open and all of the things that everything that was holding it in place is released. So now the water, because we're saying rain, but the way we understand rain today is like, oh, evaporation, and then it does this, and then it like that's not what this rain necessarily is to them.
Yeah.
This is really taking me. I'm telling you, my grandma made a comment, and I was like, that don't make sense. But she said, there had to have been real water. I said, I don't know if it was real water when it was divided, like if it was actually like water here, water there, like actual water that we think of, water like in the oceans above us. She's like, well, rain. She said rain came, or it rained. I was like, nah, that doesn't sit right with me. I don't think that correlates, because it still could be figurative. Like we still could be talking about something else here.
Well,
she might have
when you say figurative, we're talking figurative. You mean figurative rain?
like water, like thinking of. Okay,
So you're talking about in the beginning.
Okay.
Like, are we talking water? Because I don't think we mentioned water yet. Like we hadn't gotten there yet. It was coming. So I'm like, there is no water as of where we stand right now. There's no water, like, or rain. There's none of that. So that can't be the truth. Like it can't be water in the literal sense. How? If we haven't talked about it yet. But then when we got to it, I was like, okay, now do we have one? Like I don't know. I don't know where this falls. And now thinking about it, she may have been onto something. But it wasn't sitting right with me at first, because I had landed on, no, we don't have any. Water doesn't exist yet.
But water existed in the oceans.
Yeah, because he created.
Because there was animals in the sea,
but there was no rain.
Yeah,
there was no like. And what when the Holy what chapter was that? When the Holy Spirit hovered over the waters?
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1?
Yep.
But it was then that I was talking to her about it.
Because the waters were split.
Yes. When there was
expanse
put in between.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I was like, okay, water above, water below, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we were talking about the Holy Spirit hovering over the waters. I was like, so the ocean?
Right. So let's make sure we're doing this in terms of the Holy Spirit hovering over the waters.
Right.
Is
the beginning of Genesis. This is before even light was created.
Yeah, right? Before the split of things. Before.
Okay.
Right. So that's when and that's that formless void. That's that chaos that we talked about. That uncontrollable area.
Mm-hmm.
That everyone was scared of, but God comes in and says, I am taming this because this is not too big for me.
So if that was not, we're going to get so far deep into this, but if that was not water, then when the expanse was placed between the waters, at what point
why was that not water?
Okay, now I gotta go back and watch our own episode to see why we landed on figurative.
No, the figurative, I think when you mentioned it, was when the waters were split in two, waters below and waters above, and then you said, is that real water? And the expanse was in the middle.
Yeah.
And then we had the photo where we saw it was blue, but it was like, is that actually water, or is that just like we're just splitting and this is land and this is...
Yeah, but then where'd that water come from? Like it would have been real water.
Yeah.
Above.
I think that's what we're saying now, that it's probably real water.
I didn't think that before.
Yeah. I didn't either.
Because we're thinking, I think we said if it was water, then why can you fly in the sky and not like be in water, like when planes fly. We were talking about stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But now we're saying, and I think it's also the understanding of the people who are writing this is they're seeing it as if water's coming from the sky, then there had to be water in the sky already. So that water is released, and that's their understanding of how. And now for us, we're like, no, rain comes from this. So our understanding is going to be different than their understanding. But either way, I think that the point is God is saying it's going to rain for 40 days. Wherever that water is coming from, is coming down.
Right.
We're all going to think of it differently. Like they think of it as, no, that water that was up there that we said was up there is coming down, and we're saying, I don't know what we're saying, because I don't know. We're saying oh, this is the process of rain, but has it ever rained for 40 days and 40 nights and flood the entire earth? Or does it have to be the waters which I feel like would have to be enough, because if we're splitting it, when you bring that one down, it now brings that chaos again. It now brings that like everything is covered again. So everything that he had separated and put dry land here and this there and this there, he's like, nope, shut it all down, bring the waters back down, let's start all over, except for those that are on this ark.
Yeah. I mean, and that's sort of where I'm thinking now, that this waters that was talked about in Genesis may have been real water. I would not put that past it now. But I still do think that the waters have a sense of symbolism in terms of chaos and being uninhabitable because of what's going to happen, because of what the Lord has said he wants to do. I think the expanse that the Lord created actually did do the separation. What this isn't is a meteorology book.
Yeah.
So it's not going to tell us, oh, it was 95%. Well, 100% means it's raining. It was 78% humid for 3 months straight, and all the moisture built up, and that's when everything came down. I mean, that could have happened, because I also don't think the Lord set it up that we're able to discover, okay, we get evaporation and stuff going up, humidity, blah, blah, blah. Now, could this be, is this supernatural? I think it is, but I also think that the rain cycle and the way rain is created hasn't changed. The Lord can come in and do extra stuff as he wants to. But at the same token, I think when it says separating the waters, and then in the middle it says he named the expanse heaven, I think that's where he's talking about the birds were going to go, and that's where they're going to fly and where they're going to be. So now I've got waters and it talks about in the deep bursting forth. So any water that's below is sort of trapped, I guess, comes up. Makes me think of like tsunamis and stuff like that. And then this huge deluge of rain that comes down makes me think of a day when it's really humid and a storm comes and it just continues. It's like, man, I'm glad that these are those just pop-up showers, because if it continues like this for any real amount of time, it could cause some real devastation. So that's where I am.
Jeez, I'm gonna have to go back through all of this after we're done. Because
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this has got my brain going crazy.
And I may flip-flop 2 or 3 more times. Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm learning with you all as I go through this. And it wasn't until I hit this point where I was like, this is like decreation.
Yeah.
This is like going back to where we were. Although the earth is still there, right? Although the expanse is still there in a sense, because there's still the heavens, right? Although, day and night and light and darkness and the lights that rule the day and night they're still there. But that water is a thing.
Yeah.
And what it's meant to indicate of this, I mean, it's a thing.
The water has more. Look, he's prepping you.
I know. I was like, this is good stuff for my tea. My grandma always would say, she said, water is life. They would say that in church all the time too. I mean, for lots of different reasons, but water has so much significance. And I was like, are you guys just assigning significance to something that isn't as significant as you think?
Yeah.
But we see it
So
unfold.
And what I'm not saying is, I'm not trying to make it huge in terms of its significance, but what I am saying is, just as you were pointing out earlier, when you look at the entirety of Scripture, you see these connection points.
Yeah.
And those what I'm looking at. And you have, then after we make the connection points, right, we need to go back and look at them to see what those connections really are. Am I
Yeah.
making them up, or are they real connection points? And I'm meant to draw a line through Scripture, so to speak,
Yeah.
that connects from point A to point B. All right. So, anything else? So we talked about the deep, the fountains of the great deep, and the rain falling down. 40 days, 40 nights. Anything else? I mean, the rain's coming. It's hitting the ground.
Mm.
I think we touched on everything.
All right. So
I'm
last
reading
set.
to the end, right?
Yes.
All right. Genesis chapter 7, verses 17.
Whole 8 verses.
I know. I don't know why it said 22, but I was like,
Yeah,
okay.
That's wrong.
Genesis chapter 7, verses 17 to 24.
Yes.
The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heavens were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days.
All right.
Jeez.
So the flood continued for 40 days. I broke this up into 3 areas. The intensity and totality of the water, in terms of its destructive nature. The sufficiency of the ark, and the blotting out of all land creatures. Do y'all see those 3 items in there? So if we touched on the intensity and total destructive power of the water, how would you describe that based on what's read, or what would you pull out from those verses that would talk to that?
I think that even the fact that it's covering the mountains, right? You would think sometimes birds kind of get on my nerves, but birds, a lot of times you're like, oh, you can fly. Why don't you just fly? But they can only fly for so long.
Yep.
So there's no escape. There's nothing for you to land on. They don't walk on water. Like, they're going to be wiped out. And yes, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
And didn't just touch the top of the mountains. It covered them 15 cubits deep.
Yep.
Like, that's a lot. Like, that's in the sky. It's in the clouds. Like, everything that you can see is covered with water. And then the fact that the ark is like, as the waters rise, the ark is just flowing with it is also really insane. Like, thinking how high that is. Water is so powerful. I mean, we know that today. So I'm kind of scared of water now. But water, like the force of water, even thinking about how it could carry the ark is like mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. I mean, just think of it. It was like waters increased. That's mentioned like twice. Then it talks about the waters prevailing over the earth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they in a fight, and the water's like, nah.
Yeah. It can't fight.
It can't fight back. And then even the sheer amount of time that it talks about this water sort of rising and being there, and the flooding continuing for 150 days. I think this is when I read this. This is when I realized, like, this is real decreation. This is real The Lord said, y'all not doing right.
Yeah.
Y'all just continue to be wicked. When we looked at all of the superlatives, every, all, continually, y'all just, so I got to do what I got to do. But then in that, which is beautiful, I think, and you touched on it already, Jasmine, is you see the ark.
Yeah. It's so cool. It's so interesting. Like, okay, science lesson. So wood floats, right? Like wood just going along will float.
Mhm.
But you think about like how ships float, and
Mhm.
ships float from buoyancy and how like the bottom is emptied and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But then I'm thinking about how this ark was floating. That must have been built into the design because the bottom of it. I mean, who knows? God, look, it's going about its way. However, it's going about its way. But it's so fascinating to me how it's making it through as the water is increasing, because also not just okay, water is increasing because it's raining.
Mhm.
So the force of continuous rain on the wood of the on the ship on the ark is also kind of puzzling because it didn't ruin it.
No,
Yeah.
it didn't.
That's so cool. Like
Mhm.
it's I don't know, it's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Something. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think we talked about how it had a roof.
Yep.
And that's all part of the design.
Yes.
The water's not sitting on this thing.
Yeah.
It's falling off of
Yeah,
it.
it's
And it's
rolling
just
off.
like, oh, I just keep going up and I keep going up.
Mhm. And so, no matter how high these waters got,
And
the ark just sort of rolled up on it.
float with it.
So now the Lord shut them in, and this ark is really escape. And I mean, you touched on it, I believe. It's really a sense of salvation.
Lord,
Yeah.
bringing us through.
Yep.
Mm.
So it says, so verse 24 says the water prevailed on the earth for 150 days, but then it rained and it poured for 40 days, 40 nights.
Mhm.
So steady rainfall for 40 days and 40 nights, but then that water didn't start going anywhere until the 150 was over.
Yep.
Okay.
That's how I read it.
Sheesh. I would be stressed out on the ark, like, okay, it stopped raining, yay. Okay, but 50 days go by, the water is still over the mountain. Okay, 50 more days go by. Okay, so the water is not going anywhere. I would be stressed out.
Everything that I've read says that the 40 days of rain is included in the 150 days of the flood.
Oh.
So that's just the rain. Don't forget, the waters from the great deep burst forth too. So we don't know how much that was, but in totality, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And I don't know if you all have heard the argument. It was a regional flood versus being a global flood.
Yeah, I did see that, but
Yeah,
I didn't see
I
that.
think it's global.
yeah.
It was a reasonable flood.
Regional.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's global as well.
Yeah.
I don't think it's regional.
Well, how could it? That's not all flesh died.
Yes.
Not like the Southwest
Right.
died.
Yeah, but I think some people would think that, I'm going to play devil's advocate, that they hadn't spread out as far as they could have. So that's all the Lord had to do was flood one region. I think it's global.
I think
Because there's
if
another
that's the
all in there,
case,
too.
could you escape to somewhere that's not flooding? So I don't think so.
I know when I see those things like the asteroid coming, I'm like, yo, run up the mountain. Go get to the highest point you can possibly get. If that mountain's not tall enough, go to the next one.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, everybody's flying out to Mount Everest or something to go up. Yeah. And that's not even the biggest mountain. I think there's one other that's bigger, but I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, so you can't. These people wanted to live, so they're going to try and figure out how to live.
Yeah, they came to that.
Yep. And so we talked about the waters. We talked about the ark. The blotting out of all land creatures.
Yeah. All swim, everything, literally everything.
everything.
I'm on board with your decreation idea, because all flesh died that moved on the earth. Birds, livestock, beasts, like these are things called out in early scripture that we saw. So, and then all swarming creatures that swarmed on the earth, and all mankind. So, kind of like an order that we've seen, and like ending with all mankind.
Yeah.
And then everything on dry land. Like this is very like everything. Let me just let you know that everything was gone.
Yep.
Everything on dry land, in whose nostrils was the breath was the breath of life, died. Now, something interesting that I thought was just so cool here, you don't see anything about fish. But then, because it's very explicit to say on dry land.
Yeah.
The fish were cool.
Yeah. As long as they could eat each other, right? Well, I guess if they ate stuff that died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're sufficient. They're
They're good.
All they need is the water. They got the oxygen.
They're good.
Everything underneath, they can eat.
Yep. Yeah.
The thing I was thinking about was the plants, and I can't remember where they were like if they were grouped with things that had not breath of life, but remember what maybe chapter 2 when we were talking about the plants and how they were, what is it, populating, multiplying, but it wasn't the same way as humans and beasts.
Yeah.
But are they destroyed in this flood because they're part of the creation story?
Yeah. So we're not explicitly told that the plants were destroyed, but I think that they
were.
Yeah, I think that they.
And the only reason I think they weren't is because of the next chapter 8.
Okay.
Because of the tree.
Okay, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
See, now that goes back to something we talked about when the plants were first introduced, about whether they were alive, because the breath of life was mentioned again, like, but in reference to like the beasts and like
yes.
and everything.
Yes.
So, but if we say that plants are living things, then everything with the breath of still the breath of life. Do they have the breath of life? Yeah, it's who knows, but all living things, like all, I don't know. Nowadays we say plants are living because of how they reproduce,
respiration and all that stuff.
Yeah, but who knows if back then, like if that was under the umbrella of breath of life or like living things.
Yeah, good points. I'm still thinking now that a lot of that stuff died, but I could be wrong because we're not told explicitly.
Yeah.
But because I think that the issue here, man, we be causing so much anguish on our surroundings because I thought about this too. The ground was cursed because of Adam, right? The blood of Abel, right, was in the ground and it was calling out. And now, because man can't get his act together, the entire earth has to suffer. It's like, come on, we tend to think sometimes that things that we do, we don't understand the true impact of them. And I think what we're seeing here is that the impact of man's wickedness, of man's disobedience, has a great impact, not just on you, but on things around you. At least at this time, as we continue to read, we'll see some other things that'll happen. But even today, your sins aren't necessarily confined to what happens to you. They have an impact on others, which is why I think you see even in the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments, I've got some of those commandments, I think the first 4, that are really pointing up to God. No other idols, right? Not use my name in vain. But then the next 6 are about the relationship we have with each other, right? We shall not covet, shall not steal, shall not bear false witness, shall honor your mother and father. So I'm reading this and I'm like, we were putting the earth and the ground and all of that through it because we couldn't get our act together at that point in time. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Breath of life. Breath of life came from the Lord, right? From God. And it was breathed into the livestock and beasts of the field, and ultimately into man. Do you still think, or do you see, I should say, that the Lord is taking ownership still of all of this? He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground. Man and animal and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out. So the Lord is taking ownership of this action. So if you got a problem with it, take it up with the Lord, because it's what and we've seen that, because he's been the one who regretted, right? Who was, we talked about this, right? This perfect creation that he created, that he's seen destroyed, basically. Man, how could you do that? He's the one who's going to bring the floods. He's the one who opens up and pulls back his restraints from the great deep and causes the rain to fall for 40 days in a torrential downpour. He's the one who has purposed in his heart that he's going to have to do something about man. So the Lord's taking ownership of all of this. But he's also the one who gets I'm saying Moses. I get excited and I mix up names. Who gets Noah and his family onto the ark, seals them in. Along with all that he wants to keep his creation going, has them float up on the deep waters in safety.
Yeah.
Hey.
It's amazing.
That is chapter 7.
Yes.
Any final thoughts?
I'm excited for chapter 8.
Excited for chapter 8.
Yeah. Everything on the ark was saved.
Everything on the ark was saved. Yes, it was. And so that's a lot like I should say it this way. We have this safety net now. Right. It's not made out of gopher wood. It's not 300 cubits long and 50 cubits wide. But it is a one who hung on a tree. It is a one who came and suffered a fate that we as sinners deserve. Unless you think you're too far from the folks that we read about in chapter 7, just hang out with us, because you'll see some things once we get to chapter 9 that'll let you know that you're not. But the big thing is that same safety, escape, that whole salvation that the Lord provides for Noah and his family and all of the beasts of the field and creeping things that creep and birds of the air that the Lord had provided to Noah, he also provides to us now in the form of Jesus. In the form of Jesus Christ being the one who died for our sins, who was buried in a tomb, and who was raised on the third day. So if you believe in that, then you've got escape. You're rising on top of the waters that are a sense of judgment, that are a sense of calamity, that are a sense of chaos. You're rising above that in Jesus Christ. So, food for thought. I want you to believe. If you have any questions, just DM us. We'll get back to you. But yeah, I think that's it for Genesis chapter 7.
Yes.
All right. For Ms. Moyo, for Ms. Jasmine, I'm Chris with Generational Scriptures. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share, do all of those things. Help us reach our goal of whatever our goal is for more people to watch. But yeah, we thank you all for hanging out. I enjoyed this episode a lot.
Me too.
Had a lot of good discussion.
Yeah.
And just stay tuned, because the next one's going to be just as good. and just as fun and just as much discussion.
Mhm.
So on that note, we out of here. Deuces.
Bye.